Hey everyone, and welcome. Today we're diving into a really fascinating geopolitical puzzle. We're going to break down the border tensions between Cambodia and Siam, which you probably know as modern-day Thailand. And we're not just looking at it as some simple dispute, but as a really high-stakes strategic calculation. And the source material we're looking at doesn't mess around. It jumps right in, framing its whole analysis around this one really provocative question. This really sets the stage for what we're about to unpack: the real probabilities of war versus peace in the region.
Okay, so here's our roadmap for this. First up, we're going to explore the reasons a conflict could actually happen. Then we'll flip the coin and look at the much stronger case for peace. And finally, we'll get to the heart of it: what this analysis says is really going on at that border.
Now, this is what I find so interesting. The analysis doesn't just give a simple yes or no answer. Nope. It frames the entire situation as a probability problem. And you can see, while there's a very real risk of conflict, the odds are pretty heavily stacked in favor of peace. So let's dig in and unpack the logic behind these numbers, shall we?
All right, let's start with that smaller slice of the pie, the 35% chance. According to this analysis, if Siam were to invade, this would not be some random act of aggression. Oh no, it would be a highly calculated move with very specific goals in mind. So what are those goals? Well, the analysis boils it down to two main strategic objectives. First, there's the pretty straightforward goal of just seizing more land. But the second one, that's way more complex. It's about using the conflict itself as a tool for international diplomacy.
So how would a strategy like that even work? Well, the idea would be to launch a limited, short-term war, just to grab some territory. But here's the kicker. The real prize isn't just the land. It's all about creating an international crisis that a major power like China would have to step in and mediate. Now, why China? Because getting their favor could unlock massive investment and political backing. Then, by agreeing to de-escalate, Siam could spin itself as a peacemaker, boosting its image on the world stage. I mean, it's a bold, incredibly high-risk gambit, for sure. Okay, but now let's flip over to the other side of this equation and see why the source argues conflict is actually pretty unlikely. There are some really powerful forces holding Siam back, and that's what makes up that much larger 65% chunk of the probability.
So what exactly is holding them back? This perspective boils it all down to two absolutely paralyzing fears: the fear of a crushing military defeat and the fear of just profound diplomatic humiliation. And this right here really captures the core deterrent perfectly. On one side, you have Siam's greatest fears. On the other, you have Cambodia's strategic strengths. The source makes a really strong case that Cambodia holds a decisive military advantage with superior forces and better weapons. But, just as importantly, it also holds the diplomatic high ground because it consistently sticks to international law.
Yeah, and the source could not be clearer on this point. It basically says that in a direct, head-to-head conflict, Siam simply cannot win, period. They would be completely outmatched on the battlefield and would be seen as the obvious aggressor by the international community. That means a devastating loss on both fronts. Okay, so if a full-scale war is pretty much a losing proposition for Siam, what in the world is going on at the border? Well, the analysis concludes this isn't about an imminent invasion at all. It's about something else entirely. It's strategic posturing. And this, right here, brings us to the core insight of the whole analysis, the real twist in the story. What we're actually witnessing is something called a calculated standoff. See, Siam isn't really planning to go to war. Instead, it's using the threat of war, specifically by threatening to suspend peace agreements, to generate political heat and create leverage for itself.
So how does this strategy actually play out in practice? Well, by threatening to suspend agreements, CRM can look good and cooperative to global powers like the US and China. By keeping that tension simmering on the border, it gains crucial political and economic leverage. And all the while, by avoiding a real, full-blown invasion, it dodges what this source sees as a certain military and diplomatic defeat. It's a classic case of wanting to have your cake and eat it too, right? All the benefits of a conflict without paying the terrible price. And this is really why this all matters. The author completely reframes the whole narrative here. This isn't a story about Cambodia being threatened or pushed around, no. Instead, it's a story about Cambodia skillfully navigating this pressure and using this standoff as a golden opportunity to demonstrate its military readiness and its diplomatic integrity to the entire world. So ultimately, this deep dive into a very specific border dispute leaves us with a much bigger question to chew on. In our modern world of complex alliances and lightning-fast information, is the carefully managed threat of war now a more powerful and frequently used weapon than war itself? It's a really powerful thought to end on. Thanks so much for joining me.